I'm Madeline Ellis. I grew up in Denham Springs. I was born in Thibodaux, Louisiana. I went to LSU and I majored in landscape architecture.
What made you choose to major in landscape architecture?
I was kind of floundering around between a lot of different degrees, like environmental engineering and some different things. And I took one of those like how to do LSU courses, like just for credit. And they looked at everything that I was taking, like a lot of nature things, and I like people, I liked outside, I like design, and somebody was like, have you heard of landscape architecture? And I was like, no. And then you should take an intro class, you can use it as like a whatever credit. And so I took the intro class and I was like, oh, this is where I belong.
That's awesome. So now you own your own jewelry company. What made you like go into that from majoring in landscape architecture?
Well, like all along the way, like from elementary school, pretty much, I had been making jewelry like the whole time. Beaded stuff. I would like sew purses, all that kind of stuff. Like all kinds of random. Like I would make things, sew things. My mom was a seamstress, so like making. If I wanted a shirt and it didn't exist, I would find a pattern or make a pattern or whatever, make it. So it wasn't like a weird thing to me to like just make stuff that I wanted to exist. And so I kind of did that all through college. And I always carried like my box of beads around and would go to bead stores and all that kind of thing. And so when I graduated, landscape architecture is like a really long game kind of thing. Like, it's not instant gratification. It's like, 2 years from now, I'll see this implemented.
I got you.
But I needed like the I did this thing today, like here I made this today kind of thing. So, and I had like more time on my hands because I was out of school. I didn't have like homework to do, and I would go home like, okay, now what? So I started making more stuff, but it would just like pile up. But I wasn't from like a entrepreneurially minded family or anything like that. My husband is, and he was like, you need to like sell it. And I'm like, to who? Where? Like, what do I do? So he's like, let's get an LLC and like we'll start a business and we can sign up to like arts markets and whatever. And I was like, I started doing that and I liked it. Like once I started like meeting with public and like telling the story about my pieces and whatever, I was like, oh, I like can get it. People like it, and so then that gave me an excuse to make more, and then I would make money and invest that back into the tools. And so I was working like my day job this whole time.
Oh, wow.
And it was like 2008 when I really like went and got my LLC. And we just kept doing bigger shows and more shows, and it just grew and grew until finally I was able to quit my job basically and start doing it full time.
That's awesome. So what is it like kind of on a day-to-day basis, just having your own business and operating it yourself?
Well, it's a lot more than I thought. And it didn't happen overnight. So, it's like I said, it's been almost 10 years, I guess now. I started adding people, I guess, like 3 years ago. The first girl, like maybe 4 years ago, I had people kind of help me here and there, like high school student or whatever, just come in and help me box things and that kind of stuff, just for like a few hours a week. And then somewhere along the way, I had a friend come in more regularly, but that still hadn't like officially hired them. It was just like, hey, it's holiday, can you come help me really quick? Then my husband, at some point, he decided that he wanted to sell his business. We both graduated landscape architecture. He had a landscape company. And he came home one day and was just like, hey, I kind of want to sell my company and start making jewelry with you. And I was like, what? Before it was just like a fun thing. And it supplemented our income enough that like it was a legitimate, endeavor. But it wasn't like our sole income. Like if I didn't make a lot of money or sell a lot of jewelry, it wasn't like, oh, we can't pay our bills. It was just kind of like pressure wasn't there.
Yeah.
So for him to quit, which, he sold his company, so we had some money from that. It wasn't like we didn't have anything, but it was kind of like we went into it like, this will be so fun, not like, let's like really strategically plan this out and make sure we're making a good, solid decision. So we just kind of went into it like on a whim almost. And then I guess 4 months later, I was like, wow, I feel like I'm going a little bit crazy. And it was just like, I realized he was in every facet of my life at that point. Like, for years, we had just been, he goes to work, I do my thing. And then all of a sudden, he was like in my work, like in my business, in my space physically, at home, at work. So that was a lot. But then we hired somebody else, which kind of helped because it like kind of diffused like just being us, you know, making all the decisions or whatever, or doing all the work. Anyway, so we worked like that for a couple of years, and then we hired that. Then like the I don't know, maybe like 2 years ago is when we started hiring. We hired Grace, Greta, Chris, and Donna, 4 more people all in the last 2 years. So the first totally outside hire was really intimidating, kind of scary, because it wasn't like my friend or my husband.
Yeah.
It was like just some random person who's gonna be in my space, like messing with my stuff, you know. But once she got settled in and she was amazing, I was like, oh, like this can be way better with more people, you know. And then we added another person, and we just got lucky. All of the people on our team were incredible. So I guess once the team got to, like, there's 7 of us total now, and that was like a tipping point for like, not just like we're all making some stuff, that there was like a tipping point of like, now all of this have to be managed, and it has to be efficient. We're all have to like a lot of communication, over communication, flow, like all of that stuff, process, schedules, calendars, all this stuff that like I could kind of do on a whim before. Now I have 7 moving people, with their own things going on, that I have to make sure everybody, you know what I mean, like can work together, and it all, you know, makes sense at the end of the day. So that became a really big part of my job last year, was really trying to like hone in on what everybody's role was, what their piece of the process was, and how the process worked and all. And I feel like we really nailed that down last year, and it literally took like an entire year to get it really like in. And then things like, what does paid time off look like? What are the benefits, like health insurance and all that kind of stuff. Like if I want them to take this job seriously, I have to offer them serious benefits to stay. So it was a year of just like getting real about all of it, not just like, we're in a clubhouse making some jewelry, it's super fun, you know. It was like, oh wow, like this is a real job, and you know. And I have like a coach that helps me, that she does like one-on-one team talks once a week or once a month with the girls, and then we'll do like an annual review every year, all together for like a full day of just like rehashing what happened last year, what we're going to plan for the next year. So we have like a real vision for what we're shooting for, instead of just like, let's make more, it'll be fun, you know? So there's a lot more of that management part that I ever expected. But I do enjoy it more than I thought I would, that part, you know. But on a day-to-day, I guess back to your question, looks like our week is set up so that we cast on Fridays. So that means Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're building wax for all the trees. And for me, that looks like my part of that is making my new pieces on that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, if I'm going to make anything new, so that we can get it on the tree on Wednesday. We invest on Wednesday night. So Thursday, all the wax is de-waxing, and we're casting on Friday. So it's really set up to where like we have a schedule every week, and that kind of just dictates what everybody else is going to be doing. We hit shipping out orders hard on Mondays, and then it tapers off by Wednesday because we've shipped out everything that we have in stock, and anything that can't go out has to be cast that Friday. And so everybody's like piece of that looks different. Greta does all the communications, and she does like drop off to the post office or to like local stores, and she has those on 2 different days. Dawson sets stones on a certain day. So anyway, we all have like kind of different schedules, and we're all kind of like ships in the night. I don't really even go in the office that much right now because I'm working from the house, because I'm working on a lot of new pieces, and they're not distracting, I'm distracting. Like, hey, what are y'all doing tonight? Hey, like, doing like the real hard work of like creating and all that stuff. You know, it's hard.
Yeah,
and,
definitely.
And like, it's easier to just like talk about what you're eating tonight. And so I will like distract myself with like getting in their business. You know, like, what are you working on? What are you doing? And so I literally have locked myself away in the last couple of weeks just to like get the work done.
I gotcha. I can relate to that. So what are your creative insights and inspirations for coming up with new pieces?
Usually it has to do with some way that I want people to be connected, or like some part of their story within them that they don't have another excuse to talk about, like they don't have an icebreaker for talking about. So lately it's been around hard issues like mental health awareness, or I just met with somebody today about sexual trauma and abuse. Like, so that's not something that you sit next to somebody at a coffee shop and you're like, hey, let me tell you about this problem I have, you know. But there are ways, and you're not necessarily going to wear a t-shirt that some people can, and some days you feel like wearing a shirt that says like anxiety is killing me or whatever the thing is. But more times I feel like we don't want to be like accosted with some topic to talk about, or like we personally might not feel like talking about it to everybody, but maybe like would like to connect with somebody over that thing. So like having like the hug cuff, which is the piece that we made for the Greater Baton Rouge Mental Health Awareness Association. It just looks like a little like hug, like little hands hugging your wrist. It doesn't look like, you wouldn't be like, oh, you struggle with mental health, you know, like problems. Like nobody's gonna sit next to you and say that. But if you sit next to somebody on a plane or at a coffee shop and they say like, oh, cute bracelet, and you feel like having a conversation about it, you can say, thanks, actually it was designed because of this, and I've struggled with depression, or my mom struggles with anxiety, or what, you know, whatever the thing is. And then they can say, oh, dang, me too, or whatever. And then you have a reason to have a bigger conversation. But if you're having a day where you're just like, not today, you can just be like, thanks, I like it too, you know, and then not talk about it. But it gives you the option to like choose in that moment, like to have a deeper conversation with somebody, maybe a stranger that you would have not had before. And so like, to me, and I don't think all jewelry has to do this, because I like just pretty things for the sake of being pretty things. And I certainly want to make things that are fun and just pretty because they're pretty. But I do also think like there's room for making things that have a job, you know?
Yeah.
And their job is to have a bigger conversation in a way that's not immediately like off-putting, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because people can come at you with like, oh, okay, sorry, I didn't know, you know? It's like a subtle way to say like, you know, to have that conversation.
It's like an unobtrusive way to make a connection. That's awesome. What does your design process look like? Do you go through like a lot of planning before you implement something?
It depends. Like, for like, just to go back to some of those pieces that have a lot more story attached to them. Some of those were like 2 years, 3 years in the making. Those were like mulling it over, researching, digesting information, you know, like lots of statistics and lots of stuff that doesn't at all play out in the piece, but in the understanding behind it, like what it needs to mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I take in, like, if I'm, okay, like I did the Victory in Progress, this piece for the marathon, the Louisiana Marathon, and when I think we got together a couple of years ago to talk about that, and I was like, okay, I'm not really a runner, but I can fully appreciate what you're doing, seems hard, whatever. But like, and I kept kind of like, we would go back and forth, and I'd be like, sorry, I don't really have anything, it's not like speaking to me, you know, but I would read stuff about running, and I would read about it, but I didn't really like grasp it enough to be able to create a piece that was meaningful, at least, you know, that came from a meaningful place. And then eventually running became a part of my life, totally different, you know, totally outside of that conversation. And it wasn't until like months and months into that it like clicked for me, and what it meant, like what I could, like what it meant for me from the inside out. Then it was like, I know what this piece has to, you know, be, what it has to look like. And so it's not so easy as like sitting down and just like creating the thing. It's like I almost have to live it, experience it, you know what I mean? So some of it's harder if somebody just comes and says like, can you make a thing for this? Like if it's not, it's harder when it, well, I don't know. Sometimes it's harder when it really is personal, because you're like, oh, that's like a lot, you know what I mean? The responsibility of mental health, like talking about that and stigmatizing that with a piece of jewelry, like, okay, it's a lot of pressure on a piece of jewelry, you know? But the flip side is it's kind of hard when you don't you're not personally involved with it, and you don't really know it. So it's like I have to kind of digest it and take a lot in, read the history behind it, read, I just do a lot of research.
I gotcha. So for you personally, do you think it's more difficult to make things that you do feel a lot in common with, or does it take longer to like digest the material of things you don't really have a connection with yet?
I think it's harder for the things I do feel very personally like mental health. Like that's such a huge part. Like that's like fundamentally, like if I could pick one group that I would help or be back or whatever, mental health has everything to do with everything. You know what I mean? Like if you're good up here, then you're not gonna like beat your wife. You're not gonna, you know what I mean? So if you can get that right, take care of that, all these other nonprofits, organizations probably wouldn't have to exist. It's like the basic, So to come up with a piece for that was like, oh my gosh, like I don't know, like how I could do it right and do it justice. You know what I mean? So that one was really hard. And so that's a hard thing to answer, because there have been ones that, like, I didn't feel qualified to do it. You know what I mean? Like qualified to do something. So it's not so much from like it's hard for different reasons. Yes.
Do you have any advice for students or anybody else looking to start their own businesses soon or in the future at some point?
I would say, like, surround yourself with either other people who are a little bit farther ahead of you in small business, like 10 years, 5 years, who've already gotten an accountant, gotten somebody to help learn how to manage people. There's so many things that you have to weed through, like that. As a creative person, I wasn't taught, how to manage a business at all. So like, I would have taken some business classes, maybe. I would have taken maybe an accounting class, some marketing, something like that. I didn't take any of that stuff, so I was just coming at it from like a creative place, which is helpful because landscape architecture is a very like think outside of the box program where you're just trying to solve problems, not in a straight line, So I feel like I felt prepared in kind of a roundabout way. But I would say if I was doing it all over, I would have taken some of those classes. I would have gotten into like a mastermind group. I'm in a business club right now that it's been about 2 years, and there's like 6 of us or so. We meet once a month and we workshop each other, and we'll bring in an expert, or we'll, like if there's a topic that we're all struggling with, like marketing or advertising or accounting or whatever the thing is, we'll bring in an expert about it, or something like that, so that we can all benefit from it. We're all very different. We all have very different businesses, but they're all creative businesses. But we struggle with mostly the same stuff. So we all speak the same language. So if I would have had that like 10 years ago, it would have been really helpful. But I would say like-minded people, but people that are a little bit ahead of you, so that they've already like blazed some of the trail, and they can tell you like, oh wait, go to this accountant, not that one. Go to this, not that. Take this seminar. And that's the other thing. Like, there's tons of like weekend seminars. There's like your arts council probably has some kind of thing for small businesses, creatives trying to make a business out of it. There's so many resources out there, and I would say like get nerdy and take advantage of it.
Okay,
and
awesome.
Books. So many great books.
Okay, last question. Where can people find you online and take a look at your work?
mimosahandcrafted.com.
Okay, awesome.